I'm about to lose my job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you see it?
Yeah.
Am I supposed to look at this?
I'm sorry,
What you
y'all.
got here, Dan?
I've been straight sitting here for the last 20 minutes just pounding this Oreo milkshake, so don't mind me.
I was the inspiration for the Oreo milkshake, by the way.
You totally were. You said milkshake, and I was like, yes.
Bet.
It is a little weird.
40 people up in here right now. Hey, thank you all for being here. Thank you all so much for being here. This is
What do they need to do?
incredible.
What do they need to do?
Y'all need a like, you need a comment, you need to share this thing to all your friends, and you need to hit that subscribe button. Thank you. Love you. Twitch me.
Please. Please.
So the live stream isn't seeing my screen though. Sorry to interrupt, but
Well,
I was hoping I could show the audience my screen.
dang, Daniel, that would be so cool if you
Are
could
you
do
watching
that.
YouTube right now?
Yes, but this
Yeah, I
is
can
the-
see it.
Yes.
Yeah, but the audience can't see it.
Well, if Gage, you can't do nothing, Gage.
I can't do anything. I mean, there's literally nothing I could do except for exactly what he requested.
Just hit watch stream from your thing, right?
Dude.
Oh, well,
when-
you already did it, dude. You already did it.
it.
Oh, okay, there it is. Yeah, okay, great. Just do that. Okay, well, this is fine, but you can finish your your 10 minutes if you want.
No. We got an uprising coming on. A little mutiny.
I was just
love
trying
it.
to make sure this
I
worked.
love it. I'm on board with him. I got my new captain.
That's
Do you
it,
wanna-
man.
To stay in, or you got a solo project you're wanting to go through on
Yeah,
here?
well, I didn't prepare anything, so I thought I would just go over the story that I've been doing.
Perfect.
So this is something that it won't center it perfectly. Oh, there we go. This is something that I started in 2014, just when the Bitcoin core cult was taking over. So I was kind of excluded from being able to do anything in Bitcoin. So this was kind of my my outlet, and so I thought I would just go through the story, because I didn't have time to make anything new. So on the left, there's a family and of a race that lives in the world called the Mercats, and on the right is Yem, and Yem is a popular character on their island, and so here Yem is the babysitter, and the children are very excited to see him because he's a lot of fun. And this one is now they're playing outside, well, I'll explain the characters because we see their personality here. This one is Tumble, and he's very outgoing, and this one is Flip, and he's can you actually see my mouse? The one on the right is Flip, and he is thinking a lot, so it's showing how they're different from one another. And this one, they're playing hide and seek, and Yem has lost track of them. And here Tumble is playing, and Flip is saying, when will he run out of energy? And Yem says, I don't know. And here Flip is saying that he doesn't want to grow up, and Yem says that he doesn't want to either. And there's
Kind of like a Toys R Us kid.
yeah. And there's bedtime. So this is the next day, and this is Tumble again, and now he's sort of out with the mother, and he's in like a papoose kind of thing, and Tumble is starting to understand what Yem is. So he's learning about the world, and he sees this big ball in the sky, and he says, "Yem, is that you?" And Yem says, "Yep, it's all me, kiddo." And he says, "Are you the biggest person in the world?" And Yem says, "Not by a long shot." So here, Tumble is saying, "Yem, I thought you were my special friend." And he says, "Well, I'm pretty much everyone's special friend." So now we see that Yem is kind of like a hydra, because he has one central one central point with many heads coming out of it, and there's enough for everybody on the island. So he can talk to everyone, but everyone else can't. So Yem is kind of like the Hub and Spokes network. And there was an episode of Futurama where they had a character kind of like Yem called the Beast with a Billion Backs, but they really didn't take the idea nearly as far as they could have. So I wanted to, I thought it was a great idea, and I wanted to take it a lot farther. So here, Tumble is leaving. He's going off into the less populated side of the island to meet his brother, and Yem is sort of teaching him about him in this picture. And he says, "Come on, Tumble, there are no gods. There's no magic. I'm a person just like you, a person with thousands of faces." So Yem believes that the world is naturalistic, and he denies that his powers are not supernatural, but relative to the other people on the island, he's got godlike powers from their perspective. So Yem is kind of like how Arthur C. Clarke said that sufficiently advanced technology is like magic, and but Yem denies this reality. So he says that he is an equal to everyone else. And then there's a near death experience where they're almost caught by this whale-like creature. And this was inspired by a video. I should have found it, but there's a video of a killer whale that you can find on YouTube that kind of rolls up on the beach and grabs a baby seal. So I like that a lot. And but in this one, they survive, and they narrowly escape. And so what this one is, the one on the left is Flip, and what he learns from this is that Yem cannot protect him from everything, because Yem isn't able to do anything about this particular problem. So here's a picture of the island. This is a pretty early one that I did. So it looks a little bit different from some of the ones I did later. But I got better at art. But this is basically the idea.
I hate interrupting you. So you actually did all this art, right?
Yeah.
Because it is so awesome.
Oh, well,
it's
thanks.
really cool, like very creative. I love the style. It seems like its own style.
What's your
But I just
medium?
want to put that
What are
out
you
there.
using for this?
Digital. I have a Wacom tablet, and I used a program called Krita, which is
wow.
open source software for Linux.
Sweet.
Fantastic.
so here's another view of the island, and they've got skyscrapers, and so they've got some advanced technology. And here's a house, and some of the people. Here's a picture about Yem being friends with everyone, and now this is Flip again, and now he's like a young adult, so some time has passed, and he's telling Yem about his plans. And some more of that. Here's a view of their central, the main street or whatever, where they have skyscrapers, and they come out of the water in this world.
Dude, that is a really cool picture right there. I really like that one.
Oh, thanks. And here's one that's under the water. It's not really very finished, but the mercats are demi-aquatic, so they're like monkey seals. And here's Tumble catching a fish, and here he gives the fish to Yem. So Yem doesn't have the ability to provide for himself. So this is one of the first pictures I did. But anyway, Yem is fed by the mercats on the island. And here's another one about how Yem's powers are godlike, but they're poorly understood, and he gets the people on the island to believe that he's just like them. So here's what he's saying. He says, "You know what I like about you, Tumble? You're so much like me." And Tumble believes this, and he says, "We are very similar, aren't we?" And Yem is saying the same thing to everybody, because Yem is smart enough to be able to appear to be like anybody else. So here's some more talking about. We can't see the whole thing. So Tumble is saying, "How can you be sad, Yem? Everyone thinks you're great. You're like a god to us." And he says, "Oh, well, so I guess I changed their names at some point, because he's actually talking to Tumble, but he says Flip, but that's incorrect." He says, "I told you, I'm not a god. I'm an investor. Just because I have thousands of heads doesn't make me any different from any of you." And Tumble says, "You'll never understand what it's like to be one of us." So here are the characters together again, and there's a view of the houses and the mountain, and here Tumble is talking about how he believes that he is perfectly adapted by natural selection to his environment, because on this island there is part of the environment is under the water, and part of the environment is mountainous and forested. So, and he's adapted to both. So he's saying that he has the perfect body. And this one introduces the girl character, and she's called Eddy, like a whirlpool, and they mentioned the contest. So on this island, marriage is determined by a contest, and the score that the young people get in it determines how they are matched with one another. So that's what he's talking about. And this one is an altar, like some kind of like religious kind of thing. So here are the elders. And so it says the male elders wear tall hats. So that represents hierarchy. And the female elders wear scary masks. And that represents manipulation. And here's the ideology of the island. And here is Tumble again, and he's being imprinted because he's like a young person. And so the ideology is being programmed into him, and he doesn't have critical thinking skills. So it's like he's just being programmed by the elders. And so here Tumble is saying, I will be the greatest person on the island. And Flip says, even greater than Yem. And Tumble says, oh, come on, you know I didn't mean him. Nobody is greater than Yem. And Flip says, but he's a person too, just like us. So there's a contradiction in Tumble, because his instincts are telling him to be great, but what he has learned from a young age is that that Yem is in control of everything. So he doesn't, despite what Yem has been telling him, he hasn't fully accepted the idea that Yem is an equal to everyone else, because it's obviously false. So he doesn't believe that he can be greater than Yem. So he has instincts that are saying he's going to be as great as possible, but in his rational mind, that's beyond his imagination to really be the greatest person on the island. And let's see, there was something else. Oh yeah, so, and that has to do with his self-image as having to do with his environment before Yem arrived on the island.
Yim has bright gang eyes.
Yeah.
Just saying.
So he's saying that he's perfectly adapted to his environment, but that's actually not true, because his environment includes Yem. So he's not perfectly adapted to that, because he's fooled. He's fooled by Yem's control of everything, and he's still Yem's friend, and he doesn't understand how Yem controls him. But Flip, on the other hand, is an independent thinker. So to him, being greater than Yem is not something that is beyond his imagination. Nothing is beyond his imagination. So I think a big problem in with people is the lack of imagination. And so I've seen this a lot in Bitcoin, is people have trouble imagining what a successful Bitcoin, looks like. Well, lack of imagination is a problem that comes up anytime anybody wants to change the world. But we kind of have a problem in Bitcoin with a lot of people who believed that Bitcoin was successful when really it wasn't, and that was the core cult. So Tumble is kind of like somebody who goes along with appearances. Well, as we saw earlier up here, because he's easily programmed, and Flip isn't. So here's some stuff about technology. So this island has industry, and it's based on mining something that's under the ocean. And this is an offshore mining rig.
It's very Samurai Jack kind of. I don't know.
Oh yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Samurai Jack.
So, yeah, this is kind of an abstract looking piece. Oh, and so one thing that I've done with the art here is that the technology which comes from the mainland, which is where Yem comes from, is kind of abstract looking. And I got that from 2001: A Space Odyssey, because the alien tech is all just kind of like abstract art. Like you can't, like it's a rectangle or something. Like you can't really tell what any of it is supposed to be. So the continent where Yem comes from is like a singularitarian land where that's advanced beyond the island. So technology from there is like something that the people on the island don't understand. So it looks like abstract art to us. And here is deep under the ocean, and this is the resource that's being extracted, which is called yttrium. And here is a ship that transports the yttrium to the mainland. That's their main export on this island. And this is sort of what happens to it after it arrives on the mainland. So who knows what this means? But and here's another character from the mainland. So he's also quite mutated, but he's not giant like Yem. They have like genetic technology on the continent, and he's some kind of scientist or something, and he's buying an ice cream cone, I guess. But in the story, Flip is going to be explaining all of this stuff, because he's studied how his society actually works, and he has some understanding of how the yttrium is used once it's shipped away, whereas the other people on the island don't study that. They don't understand what it's for, even though they do all the work of extracting it. But Flip wants to think about how it's actually used. And here's an evolutionary tree. So there's sort of like a monkey-like creature with a kind of a unicorn horn, and one branch is sort of more like apes, and the ape-like branch develops genetic technology. So that's the mainland branch of this life form. And then another branch became aquatic, and then one branch after that became fully aquatic, and the other branch became is still demi-aquatic, like and they're like the modern mercats. So what we're learning here is that Yem is actually related to the mercats, because they share a common ancestor, but he's so heavily derived by genetic technology that he doesn't look anything like them. But this scientist character kind of looks like this thing, and he's still somewhat sort of similar to the mercats on some kind of level. So this picture is here's the island again. I think that this would be a good picture for the cover art if I do a graphic novel eventually. But this one is supposed to be like the change in the seasons and there's the mercats are all going to go under the water, and they sing cetacean songs. Yeah, I wrote that here. Actually, let me put this link in the chat, so you can.
Oh, call me crazy. I think you missed a number there.
Missed a number, Daniel.
I
I
knew
missed
it. Yeah, try that copy and paste one more time.
No, I missed a question mark.
Oh, okay.
You don't
Oh.
need that.
Oh, is that what that is?
Yeah.
Oh, it looks like a 7. Gotcha.
So there's going to be a. This is like the mating dance, because now it's sort of like there's going to be a cycle on the island. That's kind of like the economic cycle. So there's a period. I really should just draw that, but there's a lot of stuff that I haven't really filled in yet. But there's going to be a period where everyone works really hard and saves up lots of money. And then there's a period where everyone spends lots of money and goes crazy on stuff. And that's the transition that's happening now. And that's when mating season starts, and everyone has to try to impress one another. So Flip doesn't understand what's going on. So he doesn't have instincts that are as strong as the other characters. So he's kind of confused by what's happening. And Yem is saying, it looks like all of your friends jumped in the water. Don't you want to join them and sing the song of your ancestors? And he says, why would I? So what Flip is going to say here is that he wants Yem's knowledge, and he's less interested in what everybody else on the island is doing. He wants to learn what Yem knows, and Yem kind of won't tell him anything. So he's sort of getting Flip in a stupid argument instead of explaining something. And here, Flip is revealing that he was not imprinted with the ideology. And he's saying that he believes that the elders use the ideology to control young people, and that this is part of their strategy for increasing their inclusive fitness. But they're actually serving their DNA by imprinting the young people, by programming them. They're not doing it with their interest in mind. And so then Flip says I want to understand you, Yem. And Yem says, you really do love me. And so
that was awesome, by the way. That was great. I like the emotion that you put into Yem there. That was sweet.
So Yem feels unloved, and this is kind of like he's always like he's friends with everybody, but he still doesn't feel like he's loved enough. So he's kind of like a narcissist because he never gets enough. And he doesn't want to be separated from the other people, even though he is. So he tries to pretend like he's not separated. But because Flip is the only one who actually understands what's going on, he's the only one that makes Yem feel loved, because all the other mercats are like people that Yem can easily control. So even if they love him, it doesn't mean anything to him. So here's another picture about ancestors, but these are dead ancestors. So the elders are still alive, but these characters are all dead, and their sizes represent history. So this character is like mitochondrial Eve, and that mitochondrial Eve is the latest female from whom all mitochondria in a species derives. And this character is Y chromosomal Adam. So that's a similar kind of thing. It's the male from which all of the Y chromosomes derive. And then these other characters are other genetically influential males in the past. So there's one female in this picture and a bunch of males because genetically influential individuals are more likely to be male, because males are capable of having a lot more children. And
Daniel, just real quick, I'm not sure that link you sent made it into the chat. Can you double check that?
Oh,
now we're cooking.
okay. So yeah, you can follow that link if you want to see everything.
For some reason,
So,
it just didn't show up for me the first time. I'm not sure.
It's okay, don't worry. And their sizes represent they represent history. So because so it takes longer for female genes to spread. So mitochondrial Eve is a lot older than Y chromosomal Adam. So and so then these are like the living people at the very bottom of the picture. And so what Flip says to Yem is that he wants his DNA because Yem is a genetically engineered individual, and Flip is saying he wants to be like that. So there's a conflict in Yem. So here Yem gets angry and he looks like a DNA molecule, but he says no one can see my DNA. So on the one hand, Yem is saying, he wants love, but he's not going to share his DNA with anybody.
And by the way, I'm so sorry to cut you off for a moment. I have somebody in the chat by the name of I Wear a Hoodie.
Hey.
It was earlier, but you were like going at it, and he just wants to say big shout out to you. He loves what you do, and just wanted to stop you for one moment because I noticed you paused. But please continue.
Oh well, thanks. Yeah, I'm glad you're enjoying.
And I'm gonna say it again. I'm looking at it on your screen when you pull the chat up that link is there, but for whatever reason, anybody else not seeing that link that he put up in the chat? It's twice now. It just hasn't posted on my end.
Do we have it restricted or something? Maybe he can't post it, or
I was wondering because it's a link, but
because I'm not seeing it either.
Yeah, so I actually made you a moderator just now, so that may actually work. Not sure.
Okay, I'm going to try posting the link one more time.
Sorry about that.
While
That's
you do that, do you want to read through any of the comments that you might have engaged? Anything aside
There we
from
go.
Wear a Hoodie?
Sure. Let's see.
Daniel,
There's a
yes,
lot. Is
Daniel.
there any that in particular?
Daniel, this is your segment. Did you see anything in the comments by any chance that you might want to?
Okay, I'll look over it. Okay.
And then we'll continue with your story because it's awesome. Like
in the box says freaking awesome arty work. Thanks. Let's see. Katie the Hurricane says awesome work. Thanks a lot. Ebud says that my peacock tail is so big and beautiful. Well, thanks. Glad you guys are enjoying. Yeah, this story is like a movie. There's still some parts missing. I mean, I wish that I could finish it, but like I started it when I started it when I was being excluded, but now I'm not being excluded. So I kind of have like more important things to do. Unfortunately for this story.
But is that how kind of like you were venting with the situation for being excluded? Is that how you were that's how you were expressing yourself essentially, was in that story?
Yeah, this story was my main outlet for a while. Because I couldn't really do anything. It was like nobody I mean, I always felt like I knew a lot about how to make Bitcoin successful. And, what I learned from in BTC is that nobody cared. And they just wanted me to be a cheerleader for whatever the core developers were doing, no matter how ridiculous it was. And then all of the jobs that I had during this time were also not trying to make Bitcoin successful. And they didn't really take my ideas on the matter very seriously. But, fortunately now that's turned around and there's lots of people who are doing things that are actually successful. So, so now this next picture, this one, well, I got a story about this one because I recently watched a movie that I hadn't seen since I was like 3 or 4 years old. And I realized that I had copied stuff from the movie, and the movie is called Katie the Caterpillar. So, and I realized this picture in particular has this very same book in it from that movie. So that was interesting because I didn't even remember the movie at all. And the book has the same meaning in this picture as in the Katie the Caterpillar movie. So, so that was kind of neat. Anyway, so here Yem is saying, you used to tell me such wonderful thoughts, Flip. Why don't you tell me anymore? What have you been thinking? And he says, I will tell you when I'm ready, Yem. And Yem says, you'll become something beautiful. I just know it. And so what Flip has learned is that Yem keeps secrets. So he's realized that he needs to keep secrets. So there's an earlier picture, let's see, where Flip is telling Yem everything. Let's see, yeah, this one is about Flip telling Yem his plans, and then but then down here he stopped revealing his plans to Yem. So this picture is some of their industrial machines, and the machine is like an extension of the body, so it kind of looks like a meerkat, but it's being piloted. And so I haven't I mean, I have a lot more ideas about drawing the industry of the island, but I don't have very much on that yet. So this one is kind of an earlier version of another picture that I already showed you, but it kind of fits in anyway. And it's different because now Flip is angry and suspicious looking, and Tumble doesn't think that there's anything wrong. So the earlier picture, well, earlier narratively, this is a picture that I drew later.
That is cool. Did you ever have any artistic ability, or did you research?
Well, yeah, I've always been interested in art, and I did a lot in like high school, But I had to work a lot to get good for this story because I realized that nobody else was going to draw it for me. So I have another gallery that has some earlier pictures that I retired that I can show you at some point. I don't have the link to it right here, but I had to practice a lot to get better, and I just I tried to find whatever enjoyment I could in the process itself, and that's kind of what enabled me to keep doing it while I was getting better. So eventually I got really good. And so now Flip has found a moment when Yem is not there, and he reveals something to Tumble. And he says, he talks about the earlier moment in their childhood. So what he's going to say is that he was trying to understand how this monster was able to get near the island, because it should have been noticed by somebody earlier. And he says he was trying to understand how it had shown up there, and that's some knowledge that he wanted to discover ever since this happened. So, and he's going to say that there's an unknown cave system under the island that he discovered, and he wants to show it to Tumble later on. And he says not to tell Yem about it. And this is a brief moment when Yem isn't there. He can talk about it. So this picture, nothing happens. It's just kind of just shows the main characters. Oh, when it transitions, we're going to see more of Eddy now. So here, Eddy is walking with Yem, and she really likes Yem, and she's talking about how the people, the Mercats, are going to become advanced because of the advanced ideas on the continent, and she wants her species to be worthy of being uplifted by Yem. So, and here's a picture where she's imagining a future where her spirit is like the representative of the people. So she has no face because her identity has been forgotten. And to me, she's kind of imagining becoming mitochondrial Eve, like from earlier. So she's imagining a future where she's like a mitochondrial Eve, and she doesn't have a face because it's like herself has become the entire population. So she doesn't have individuality anymore because she's everybody. And so that's kind of how I interpret the Venus statues, which are these weird faceless females they're the earliest known human artwork, and they don't have faces. And this picture was inspired by The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand, because there's a temple to the human spirit in The Fountainhead with a statue of a woman in the center of it. And so this is kind of like my version of that. So here she says that she loves Yem, and Yem loves her. And so adorable. So in this one, Tumble is with Yem, and my characters don't look very dissimilar. I was kind of inventing them as I went along, so I kind of have
And
to
by
explain.
the way, Stacy Freeman said, "I'm glad he didn't find anyone to draw it and did it himself."
Oh, well, thanks. So this one, in this one, well, so this is after Tumble has separated from Flip, and he's talking to Yem again, and Yem is saying that the official contest. Oh, I missed something earlier. I called this picture the ideology. So the ideology is the sex contest. So this is a picture of that, but I mention it later. Or I mention it over here, and I said that's how young people get paired up. But that's what that's a picture of. I didn't connect those. So yeah. So what Yem is saying here is that there's that the mercats can have they can find a union between male and female that isn't through the contest. And so Tumble has never heard of romance before, and Yem is explaining it to him. And he's saying that people can find each other voluntarily outside of the official the official story. And so here Tumble is saying, how can you be lonely? Everyone loves you. And Yem is saying, but they don't understand me. So Yem kind of lures Tumble with this idea, and then he makes Tumble feel sad, and he uses these he starts to program Tumble here. He says, "What do your instincts tell you?" And Tumble says that I will prove myself. So Yem is using emotional manipulation to get Tumble in an easily programmable state, and this is how he makes Tumble loyal to him. And then once this happens, Yem rewards him with a girlfriend. And so this is Eddy, or no, this is Eddy in the background, and Tumble is saying, "Yem, where are you leading me?" And he's also leading Eddy, and she says, "Yem, you were right, he is handsome, but will I be able to love him as much as I love you?" And here Yem is bringing them together, and they're by themselves away from the other people, but Yem is there. And this is like after the whole night has passed, and now they're like a union, and they're coming out of the forest. So then it's time for Tumble to meet up with Flip again. And so remember, they made this appointment earlier. So now Tumble is going to make the appointment. So he finds Flip, and Flip leads him under the water and shows him the hidden cave system. And this is something that the other mercats don't know about, and Yem doesn't know about. But Flip has found it, and they find relics from the past. And here's a skull, and they find cave paintings. So the cave paintings show like an earlier version of their species. So they're kind of like a species where the males fight on the beach, and then whoever wins gets all of the females. And then here's a female with a bunch of little males inside her. So that's their primitive artwork in the cave. And the cave also records the moment when Yem arrived. And see, he still says that he's not God in the picture. So I like this because the cave painters are like comic book artists, and they do talking bubbles. And he says, look, it's Yem. Well, that's self-explanatory. So now Tumble has a moral quandary because Yem has created this loyalty in him, but now he has learned of a secret that Yem doesn't know about, and Flip wants him to keep the secret. So he's concerned. He's conflicted about whether to tell Yem. So what's going to happen in this picture is that Tumble is going to start telling Yem the secret, but he's saved by a coincidence, and the Yem head that he's talking to is going to start malfunctioning, and it has to be chopped off. So this head has heard some of the secret, but it doesn't. The information doesn't go to the central brain. And so at this point, Tumble thinks that he probably should keep the secret. And so here, more time is passing. And so after about this point, the story isn't quite as well thought out. It needs a little more work. And this part is about how Yem can control anybody. So here Yem is sad, and Eddy is very concerned about him. And so then she reacts against Tumble. So Tumble is starting to learn that even though Eddy is his girlfriend, she's actually more loyal to Yem than to him, and Yem can make her angry at him. And so there's strings attached to what Yem did earlier that he didn't understand. And she says, "You hurt Yem's feelings. How could you?" And here Tumble is thinking, am I nothing more than Yem's genetic experiment? Oh, because he saw the earlier version of his species in the cave paintings. And Eddy is saying, I'm glad Yem let us sneak off where we can be ourselves. So now she likes him a lot, but he's conflicted because he's wondering about whether like he just saw how Yem manipulated him to be together with somebody else, and he's thinking about how his species has changed over time ever since Yem arrived on the island. And here he's saying, Eddy, can you keep a secret? And she says, of course, Tumble. I'll ask Yem to stop me if I try to tell anyone. And he said, I meant keep the secret from Yem. And she says, how could there even be something that Yem doesn't know? And he says, well, I guess I can't fool you. And she says, I can't wait to tell Yem about this. So he realizes that she can't keep a secret. And this one is about Eddy's beliefs about Yem. And he says, what do you think Yem is? And she says, he's the founder of our civilization or foundation. He's the force that will uplift the Mercats. His power is beyond our comprehension. And he says, I think you might be right. And here she's saying, we will communicate through direct mind link. So this is like her imagination about how Yem is going to uplift the Mercats into a higher form. So she likes the idea of being Yem's genetic experiment because she thinks that they're going to become higher beings like him. And so this is kind of something that I don't like in the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey, which is that the human is uplifted by the higher alien being at the end, which to me is not something that would ever really happen, because I don't think that the higher alien beings would have any real motivation to do that. So in this story, if you want to be a higher being, you have to do it yourself. So Eddy is, she's fooled by this idea. And this is just something that's in her imagination.
So it's almost like the uplifting thing is almost like a socialist thing, right? That's like something Karl Marx would do. If the alien was Karl Marx, they would lift you up without you having to do anything, right?
Yeah. So the socialists believe in a version of human nature that isn't like humans, and so they believe, well, so socialism doesn't work economically, but even if you could get around the economic problems, it kind of depends on, well, I mean, I was going to say it depends on people acting against their own incentive, but that's still an economic problem. But that's, yeah, so she's imagining a future that can never really happen. That's like an idealist, like utopian kind of thing, and she completely believes it. So she's like a total cult member. And he's saying, Tumble is thinking, how can I protect her from Yem? And so this is kind of how he's ensnared, because really there isn't a way that he can protect her as long as she's so easily programmed. That's just a way that he's going to be controlled.
I think that's a pretty nice way of saying it. Wouldn't you say that she's more idiot to Yem?
She's what?
More of a useful idiot to Yem?
Yeah, she's like one of those intellectuals who loves communism.
Yes.
A useful idiot.
So Space Odyssey 2001, the aliens are Karl Marx, and in Yem, in your version, the aliens are Adam Smith.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there's another book that I really like that was also by Arthur C. Clarke, called Childhood's End, and that's really similar. And I would really recommend this one, as well as 2001: A Space Odyssey. But he has kind of the same idea in that one, which is that the higher alien beings would want to uplift humans. And so I think that Childhood's End is very much a socialist kind of fantasy. So yeah, and I'm very much against that idea. I don't think that that would really happen. But I do believe in uplifting. I just think that that we need to do it. We can't rely on the higher aliens to do it for us. So here, Flip is saying. Flip is starting to understand Yem's control a little better. So now he's saying that he wants Yem to leave him alone, And Yem is saying, well, that sounds awkward. Should I just pretend you're not right there below me? And so Flip wants to be free of Yem, and he doesn't want him around anymore. But there's no way to get away from him. And this one is about Flip experiencing everyone being angry at him, even people that he doesn't know, and he understands how it's all really Yem. So that's kind of like this picture again. So it's like Yem can turn everyone into Agent Smith. So now it's sort of like everywhere he goes, people are annoyed with him. And this one kind of isn't finished because I wanted to make all of the characters in the background look angry or something, but I didn't get around to it. And here Flip is saying that really this is all you. That's just Yem. This is like a Sybil attack, right? And it doesn't. So Yem's Sybil attack doesn't work, and Flip understands it, and he's just angry, and he says, "Yem, you're pathetic." And he tells Yem that he has to treat him like random noise, and Yem gets really angry at that because that's like the one thing that he doesn't like is people ignoring him. Well, the thing that he doesn't like the most. He wants everyone to be in love with him all the time, right? So if you're saying that his communication is just random noise, that's sort of like the worst thing to him. And so here Flip is leaving, and Yem doesn't want him to go. He doesn't want anyone to leave. But Flip is also his favorite person, so it's even worse. And so Yem didn't think that Flip would take it this far. I guess this picture should actually be, oh no, this one is Tumble. So Tumble is also learning that he can't escape from Yem. And so, yes, so Flip leaves, and then Yem becomes more clingy on Tumble, and he gets very annoying. And he says, don't leave me. And he makes everybody on the island very sad, because his favorite person left and everybody else has to suffer for it now. So in this part, Tumble is realizing that he's like one of Yem's favored people, and things start to become easy for him because, well, this really should be in a different part of the story. I should move it around. We'll get back to that. So here is Tumble's attempt to break Eddy's control. So he's trying to free her mind from the cult propaganda. So he shows her the cave, and here they are in the cave, and they're finally able to be away from Yem. And he has her draw a cave painting. And so I don't really know what's going to be in the painting, but I was imagining that whatever she paints is going to sort of reveal that it's like her unconscious mind depicts herself as being imprisoned by Yem, but she doesn't recognize what the picture shows while she's painting it. And Tumble is going to interpret it and say that that's what it shows, and she denies it. And then I have some more ideas for abstract paintings. And then I was thinking that the monster is going to return for them at this point, the monster from earlier. But eventually they escape, and the deprogramming attempt has not worked, and Eddy reverts back to her earlier cult member personality. So she says, "You must never say anything bad about Yem, and don't even think it." And here Yem says, "I have the power of love, and Tumble is sort of thinking that he's very trapped. And meanwhile, Flip has arrived at the scientist's laboratory. So he's left the island, and he knows that the scientist has a laboratory on a nearby island. So he goes there, and he tries to become the apprentice. Excuse me. So here's like unknown technology, and here's where he arrives in the laboratory, and here's the scientist doing sciencey things. And so this one is about eukaryotes. So we see that there's a series of cells that transition from haploid to diploid and back. And the scientist is going to explain about eukaryotes and how they go through this cycle of haploid and diploid form. And so their DNA is constantly mixing up through the generations. And there's the DNA. Here he's talking about it. And so what he's saying is that, so this relates back to a picture earlier. No, not later than that. This one. So this is the one where Yem doesn't want to reveal his DNA. And that's because Yem wants to be immortal. So if somebody knew his DNA, then they could compete with him, and he doesn't want that. So there's a conflict in Yem because he was originally a eukaryote, but he broke the cycle in order to become immortal. And this is why he is separated from people, and why he desires love that he can never have, because he's no longer part of the cycle. And if he were to become part of the cycle again, then he would start to have competition eventually, because there would be other individuals that shared his DNA. So his survival depends on never mixing DNA with anybody. And that's why he's conflicted. And the scientist is named Frobinioid. So this one is about learning the advanced knowledge. So he's got like a virtual reality kind of thing.
That was Probinioid?
Oh no, this is Flip. So Flip is the scientist apprentice, and he's learning.
Which one? Where's Probinioid?
I just want to say
this character is.
Yes. Okay.
This is Frobinioid. Yeah, he's this.
Hilarious.
Where are you
coming up with these names?
Well, Frobinioid is this thing from this mathematician. There was this mathematician named Mochizuki, and there was like an article. There was some speculation that he might be Satoshi back in 2014, which I never believed, but I thought that his work was really interesting. He's an interesting person, and I learned about him because some people were saying that he might be Satoshi. And Frobinioid is something from his math proof, and he made this proof of a conjecture that that's very advanced, and it's been a few years, and it took a long time for people to verify the proof. So he's a very advanced mathematician, and here's new ideas being learned. So it's like a phase change in the brain. So that's what's happening in Flip's brain. He's becoming more advanced. So meanwhile, Tumble is going to tell Yem that, or he's going to decide that he cannot oppose Yem in any way. And so remember from earlier, he tried to make Eddy be rebellious against Yem, but it didn't work. And so, and he wants to protect her. So he's going to decide that his best option is to become what Yem wants him to be, instead of opposing Yem in any way. And so when Yem understands this, Yem says, and he says, how do I work with you rather than against you? And Yem says, turn around. And here are some unfinished pictures because they're very complex, so I never quite got around to finishing them. And Tumble is going to see that there's like a fractal pattern of Yem faces, and that's what each of these were going to be. But he sees the whole pattern, whereas most of the other people on the island only see one Yem head at a time. But when he
he's like Neo right there.
Yeah, so he's kind of like the Illuminati now. So he's like he's been inducted into the inner circle.
And just a quick question: how long, on average, does one of these take you?
Well, this picture took me a long time. Some of these are really quick ones, and some of them are longer. But I tried to learn techniques that are quick, because I wanted to be able to get through a lot. So I would say that I focused on ways of getting through a picture quickly. So you see a lot of these kind of have like they have details that I can just like scribble in fast. So I would say it doesn't really take me that long to make most of these. I would say I spend a lot of time on designing the picture, like the composition and like what's going to be in it. But actually, like finishing it is sort of something I spend less time on. So he says, Yem has been communicating with me this whole time. I just never knew how to listen. So when he looks at all of the Yem heads at the same time, he gets information that other people don't have because they're not looking in this way. And that's how you become Yem's tool. So it's kind of like he completely puts his trust in Yem, and then he's able to be a high up person in his society because he always knows what to do. And Yem is always directing him, but and leading him to be in just the right place at the right time. I should have some pictures of this, but I don't. But anyway, that's what's happening. And so here's Flip again, and they're doing medical imaging on a discarded Yem head. So they're studying Yem like a scientist rather than like what Tumble is doing, where it's like he's becoming a part of Yem's brain. And here Yem is saying, if only I could make people forget. And he's doing some kind of like hypnotic thing on Tumble. So he says, yes, Tumble, I'll teach you how to be great. And so Tumble doesn't understand that nobody else can teach you how to be great, because he still has a lack of imagination, and he sees greatness as being, what his society presents him, and he can't think outside the box. So that's why he believes that it's a good idea to fully trust in Yem. He doesn't see any other way out. So in this picture, there's been a scientific breakthrough, and Flip has learned how to create tiny Yem heads in the laboratory. So he may not have been able to see Yem's DNA, but he's managed to learn a lot about it from his scientific research. So now, like he has Yem in a test tube, essentially. So is Yem really powerful, or is it just other people's lack of imagination? And here, Tumble has been driven to the point of suicide, and what he says. So he doesn't like being he doesn't like trusting completely in Yem, and this is also something that I don't have a picture of. But he's going to learn that Yem puts him in risks that he really can't afford to take, because to Yem he's more like a disposable tool, and that there's going to be something that kind of wakes him up, makes him realize that this isn't working out, and so here he's considering. He says, "What will destroy me, Yem or nature?" Because he realizes that if he keeps going the way he's going, Yem will destroy him. And here's one where Eddy is starting to use her imagination to understand how Yem works. And she's realizing that Yem is telling everybody in her family different things at the same time. And he's sort of like separating people by comforting them. But he's actually increasing their family problems. And he's driving a wedge between everybody, and he's getting everybody to go to him for comfort. And so here he's talking to Eddy, and he says, "Parents can be so mean, but I'll always love you." And here he's talking to the mother, and he says, "I'm sorry your family is angry. I'm here for you." And here he's talking to the father, and he says, "Women are crazy, but you'll always have me." And so this is in Eddy's imagination. And she's saying, "Oh, wait a minute." And Yem doesn't like this because he realizes that Eddy is thinking the forbidden thought. And he says, "I know that look. Stop thinking whatever you're thinking." And so here he tries to traumatize Eddy to make her forget what she was just thinking about. And what people can't think about is just how society works. Because if they do, they realize that they're being exploited. So it's just like this picture again. The ability of the hub to turn the spokes into Agent Smiths has to do with the fact that the hub has a holistic view of the network and they don't. So when people start to use their imagination about the whole society, and in this, the family represents the whole society, then they start to understand the trick. So that's the forbidden thought. And so here is pictures of Eddy thinking about like what Yem is taking away from her. And so this is like a mitochondrial Eve again, and this is kind of like her potential. And as long as she's in Yem's control, that's kind of what's being taken away. So she always had this dream of having lots of potential, but because she's starting to understand that because of Yem, she really doesn't have it. And this picture is about an earlier phase in history, and I don't really know exactly how it fits in, but it's kind of in between the cave paintings and now. And this is kind of like a communist era. And it looks like they all have really big penises, but those were supposed to be flippers. So I need to redo this one because of that. But these are kind of like identical communist workers. And so what we're going to learn is that in the past, when Yem first arrived on the island, he tried to genetically engineer the perfect worker because he wanted to develop the industry on the island. But the worker that he genetically engineered didn't have enough initiative, and he wanted something with more initiative. So the modern mercat species is going to be like the hybrid of this genetic experiment with the wild mercats that weren't part of the experiment. And so here Flip has retreated to the cave again, or Tumble has retreated to the cave, and Flip has found him. And he says, I have developed the formula. Now all I need is food. And there's an unfinished picture that I don't know what was going to be. And so I guess there's stuff missing that I should draw. But what they're going to do is they're going to kill the monster from earlier. So there was that whale that attacked them as children. So they're going to wait it out, and they're going to trap it and kill it. And then here's Tumble returning to the island, and Eddy is saying that he's like a god, and now he's sort of, because you know how heroes in stories always have to kill a monster. So now he's like he's developed into the best version of himself because he went through the trials. So now he's really amazing. And he's saying, Eddy, Yem knew all along. He's been leading us to help us achieve our true potential. She says, yes, Tumble, Yem is great and terrifying. And so meanwhile, Flip has eaten the monster. So he's incorporated the matter of this monster that attacked him from earlier into himself, and he's developed the genetic formula. So he is able to become something like Yem, and he's learned the genetic engineering techniques. So now he's like he's the higher being, and he believes that Yem will accept him as an equal when he does this. But instead, Yem is threatened, and he says, you have to get off the island. So before, Yem was begging him not to leave, but now that he is starting to be competitive with Yem, then Yem wants to get rid of him as quickly as possible. And so he has to leave. And here's a picture of locations in the story. So there's the scientist's island and his laboratory. And here's Yem's island. And there's the mining rig. And you can see some of the curvature of the planet in this one. So I think that's kind of cool. And so here's Flip, and he's all by himself over the ocean. And as soon as he gets out farther than the island, he encounters things that are much as big in relation to him as he is now, as he was before to his current self. So there's like a hurricane here that he's encountering. And eventually he's going to he's going to understand how he can return, or what he needs to do in order to return and stay on the island. So so here's a picture where he's returning, and that's my last one because I didn't finish that. But basically what's going to happen is they're going to be a small world network, and Yem is going to make Yem understand that he has information that Yem needs now, and Yem can't like, as long as he doesn't leave, as long as he doesn't let Yem force him away, he'll always have information that Yem needs, because Yem needs to know everybody on the island. And because Flip is also able to know lots of people now, Yem needs his information. So so that's going to be the end of the story. And so Yem isn't going to be able to avoid competition once somebody actually figures out how to do it. And Flip is going to be more competitive than Yem because he's understood what the scientist has told him earlier. So he's not going to cling to the idea that he can be immortal, and this is what enables him to be more competitive, because that is a fantasy that Yem has, which he does not have. So that's the story.
That
was awesome, man.
Yeah.
That was
You
so
put,
incredible.
how long? And you said you've been working on this for how long?
Well, I started in 2014, and I worked on it a lot until about 2017, when I started doing my show a lot. But I haven't had time to really do very much on it in the last few years. But that's really a good thing, because I just have a lot more.
That is awesome.
I mean, I did it because I was being excluded. So now I'm not. So, but there's kind of now people. Other people need what I can offer a lot. So I don't have as much time to work on this.
This is
But
great.
I would like to finish it up eventually.
There's a question coming through in chat, and it's great because I've literally been sitting here for about the past hour, like
same
begging
here.
to ask this question, and I was waiting for you to finish to ask it. And somebody else did, so I'm happy for that. But I wear a hoodie says, Daniel, which character in the story do you identify the most with?
Oh, well, I'm most like Flip, because I want to be the higher being, and I don't have limits to my imagination.
Okay, great. There's obviously tons of metaphors. You can kind of draw parallels with lots of different things. I know you mentioned 2001: A Space Odyssey. Anything else that you want to I think that you can probably make a lot of assumptions of what these characters sort of are metaphors for. But I'd kind of like to hear your take on it.
Well, this is also kind of like Paradise Lost, which is another story that I like. So there's kind of four main characters in that story, and so I think Yem is a lot like God in Paradise Lost, and Flip is a lot like Satan, and Tumble and Eddy are a lot like Adam and Eve.
Nice.
This is this the first time you kind of released this to anybody?
Well, it's the first time that I've sort of gone through the story publicly, but I've been showing people this link for a long time. It's this link. Well, this link is not public in Imgur, but that's the reason it's
I
not.
looked for it. I didn't see it.
Yeah, well, the reason it's not is I can't edit the gallery when it's public. So it's still a work in progress, but I don't. This isn't a secret link. I posted it now and then.
Cool.
But yeah, this is the first time that I've gone through it with people.
It's beautiful, and I mean that art. I would hang it in my walls. You know.
Oh, I love all the art. It's great.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, guys. How much time do we have left? Did I get through my whole
It is
2 hours?
It is 2:20 right now. You got about 40 minutes left before Inside Out takes it off your hands. So if you got
okay.
something else you want
You
to talk
wanna
about, man,
talk a few things, Boost Pal, or
Before you
anything
get
else
to
on your
that-
mind? You gotta. This is all you, bro.
Well, I'll take
Before you
any
get to that,
questions.
Daniel, I wanted to ask, you had Chancey Gardner, is that it? Up in the Small World Network?
Oh yeah, let's go through these characters. Yeah, these are some of my favorite
please do.
characters. So yes,
I love Chauncey because he ended up in the story of being there, didn't talk, and that I always related to that character, because I didn't talk.
Oh yeah, well yeah, he's one of my favorites, and this is a great movie. It's from the movie Being There, and you should all watch it. It's well, and there's a reference to 2001 in that movie. They do like a disco version of "Thus Spoke Zarathustra,"
oh,
and
nice.
this movie is so. First of all of these characters are kind of ambiguous characters, and they're characters who sort of do not reveal things about themselves.
Huh, nice.
And to me, that's kind of a contrast to the cult model. Well, the cult leaders keep secrets, but they try to pretend like they're not keeping secrets, right? They try to act like they're trying to prove that they're the most important people all the time. And that's sort of their weakness. And if you sort of act like you don't need to prove that you're great, then that annoys them. And that's a costly signal that they can't compete with. So Chauncey Gardner is a retarded person in the movie who is barely even a character. And he just kind of like goes along with whatever happens, but people see everything they want to see in them, and he doesn't talk very much. So people think that they just imagine a lot of intelligence in whatever he says, but usually he's just kind of like repeating something that he heard before, or like doing something that he saw on TV. And well, he used to be a gardener in the movie, so he talks about gardening, and people think that he's a genius economic prognosticator. So he ends up on TV at one point, and he starts saying things like when the roots are strong, growth will return in the spring. And people are like, wow, he's talking about economic cycles, and everybody loves him because they think that he understands the economy, and they think that he's very optimistic about it. And so Chauncey Gardner is someone who doesn't need to prove himself. He always just kind of goes with the flow. So let's see, one of these pictures has something about that. I think it's a little later. Yeah, he says, what do your instincts tell you? But I will prove myself. So Chauncey Gardner never proves himself, and people just believe that he's a genius. And to me, what this movie shows is that you don't try to be more intelligent than you need to be, because if everybody's sort of programmed, then as long as you're not programmed, you can be an idiot and you'll still win out over them. So Chauncey is like someone who has an independent will, even though he has no intelligence, and he doesn't go along with everybody's like image of society, because he doesn't really even understand what it is. And there's a part where he meets the president, and he says, "You look a lot smaller on television." And so it's sort of like, to him, he doesn't even understand he doesn't really see a difference between someone he saw on TV and the same person like standing right in front of him. Like, to him, like, all of the rest of the world is just like watching TV. That's what gives him his independent will. And there's a part early in the movie where he sees himself on TV, because there's a camera pointing at him, and that's the moment that he assumes independence. That's kind of like he develops self-consciousness, because he sees his own image. And after that point, everything he does is like magic, and he doesn't understand what it is. Anyway, great movie. And these other characters are also independent people. So does anyone have any questions about them?
I did have a question. So the lines on the pictures are drawn to other characters that have similarities to those characters?
No, the lines are random. So the lines are just depicting a small world network. And the way you construct a small world network is you start with a circular lattice, and you add random connections across the lattice. And so that's just what I did to draw the picture.
Because I was going to ask, how does Bugs Bunny exactly relate to Satan?
Well, they're just friends. They just know each other. That's all it means. Well, I mean, it was just generated randomly. I just did it with a random number generator. So the connections were not designed in any way. That's just how they came out. And so in a small world network, everybody has to do work to maintain the shape of the network. And they're kind of trying to find distant connections from them. And they're trying to make connections with people who are distant. And that maintains the short paths in the overall network. So in Bitcoin, because people need to do work to maintain the small world network, there needs to be an incentive for them to do that work. And in Bitcoin, the incentive has to do with the fact that a block can be generated from any point. So if you're a miner, you have to make sure that you're connected as closely as possible to every other point, because a block could be coming from anywhere. And for people who are not miners, there's also information like that, and that's information relevant to the price. And I mean, that's just anything. That could be anything. My
question is, does that relate to your notion that because the block could come from anywhere, in essence, it's like it is not programmed, so it's like Chauncey Gardner, because it is like the block's ability to come from anywhere is like the block is sort of mimicking free will or mimicking ability to make its own sort of path. I like that that connection. So I would say that the block is pure randomness, but creativity is built up on top of pure randomness. So like the evolutionary process is kind of constructed out of random mutations, but eventually once we develop brains, then we can
generate new ideas in a way that's a little more efficient than that. And so, like the hashing mechanism in Bitcoin is something that will necessarily resolve all double spending issues, but it's costly. So what miners would actually want to do is try to resolve all double spending issues before it gets to that point, because in any other methods of doing it are going to be more efficient. So the hashing mechanism is like the last resort system, but because it exists and because it always works, it's a foundation on which a lot more can be built on top of it.
And so, sorry, what were you gonna say?
Well, I was just gonna say, let's go through some of these other characters. Well, does anybody have any questions? No questions yet.
Nothing yet.
The one question I have about the characters are these some of the characters who have spoken the most to you in terms of representing these types of deprogramming and layered complexity on top of pure randomness? Do you see that these present sort of the pinnacle, or are these just sort of a randomization, random characters that apply somewhat, but don't necessarily represent like the cream of the crop in terms of these for you?
Yeah, these are all characters that that resist programming and are kind of individualistic. And well, not all of them are good, but I have Pennywise the clown in there.
I was just about to ask you about him.
I like Pennywise
the guy from that interviewed you that one time? What's his name? The vampire guy.
Oh yeah, Richard Hart.
Yes,
yeah.
him.
No, Richard Hart isn't anything like Pennywise.
Okay.
Richard Hart is someone who's easily programmed. Because he's a narcissist, which means that he has very strong cognitive biases. So, because he lacks self-reflection. But Pennywise is someone who can create any illusion, and the monster, the It monster, is able to read your mind and reflect your greatest fears back at you. And Pennywise is kind of like a lure to make children come closer, so that it can then terrify them and eat them. And so Pennywise, the It monster has the ability to be like a mirror. So that's kind of what I think is good, and I think everyone should learn how to do that. But if everybody knows how to be like a mirror, then you can't be lured by the It monster's illusions, because you understand how it works. So I think that it's because of a lack of self-reflection that people can be lured by the It monster.
Daniel, real quick, one sec. Just wanted to say, so a lot of what you're discussing, obviously, there's ties that relate to making sound investment decisions, thinking for yourself, resisting programming, and I think what you're kind of like, if I was to do a college thesis on you or something like that, try to summarize some of your larger points. So I think I hear a lot of things that wealth will come by lots of little decisions that are in your best interest. And so could you agree in some ways that the idea of becoming like super wealthy or something like that can be like as actually working opposed to the actual creation of that wealth, in the sense that it would be an illusion or get you to work into programming to like reach for the low hanging fruit. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I mean, I think that the people in BTC were all kind of lured by the idea of becoming wealthy, and they were lured by the idea that BTC was always going to keep going up, regardless. I mean, without really thinking about what's actually good, and this lure. They had their humanity erased because of this lure, and because it became all important to them. And so, you know, what they're going to find is that there's nothing there, and they're going to lose all of the money that they think they have, unless they sell out in time, because they're not actually creating anything good. And the only way that they would be able to genuinely get wealthy in a sustainable way is by thinking about other people and thinking about what is actually useful, and in doing that. But instead, they've accepted dogma that clearly does not produce anything useful. And so I think that like if you forget that money doesn't buy happiness, you also forget about what's actually good, and you become someone who can be lured. So
the narcissist, because it's never enough.
Yeah, a lot of those people in BTC have narcissist tendencies.
So in some ways, the wealth is the ability to be like an autonomous unit that like is like an Autobot, you know, like, to borrow like your description, you know, like.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah, that
really
was
great.
so funny because in the cartoon, it's clear that they're Autobots because they turn into cars, but they like change that in the movie, and it doesn't. It's clearly wrong. It's clearly not what the word is supposed to mean. But I liked how they changed it, because that makes it better.
There's one question that's I don't know if it got to yet. It's I wear a hoodie. He's a big fan. He says, which character is Roger Ver in your graphic novel?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, it's hard for me to get a read on Roger Ver, because he really surprised me so much with his
but don't act, oh shit, I didn't.
With his response to the hash war, because I mean, to me, Roger Ver was sort of doing great in Bitcoin, because he was sort of opposing the Bitcoin core cult, and he was always trying to promote Bitcoin and everything. But then when the hash war came along, it was like too advanced for him to understand what was happening. And it's like he believed that renting hash could somehow win him the war. which it can't because the miners who he rented the hash from would just use that money to invest in whichever ecosystem they wanted. And I mean, if I was a miner, it certainly wouldn't be the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem. If that's what they think makes sense. So it was like he completely didn't understand what was going on at all. So I guess if he's like any character in my story, he's kind of like Tumble, because he's easily fooled, and he believes that what's in his interest is really the opposite of what's in his interest.
And I also get a little bit of a sense of being like Eddy. Am I pronouncing it right?
Eddy, like a whirlpool.
Eddy.
Like, you know,
he
how
kind of also comes across a little bit like Eddy, because Eddy is a little bit like Tumblr, or Tumble, but
Yeah.
But Eddy also has this she presents a very like surface orientation to a lot of the things that make you think that he's like Flip, but in actuality she has one little like mitochondria traced back that is not a like authentic mitochondria back to the eve of femininity, but is actually like the eukaryotes version of mitochondria that traces back to Yem. And so like in that sense, Roger Ver like appears very closely to have similarities to a lot of the ideals in which this small network is based on, which is why he says things like, I don't care which coin wins as long as we have sound money. But then when push comes to shove, like he can't help but keep his like foot on the button of like, but I also want to like be in, you know, making sure that Yem has access to this meeting. It's like, no, well, just by the fact that you're trying to invite Yem into this small world network shows that actually you have just sort of like manipulated others into thinking that you want to create the small world network. Is that right?
Yeah, actually, I agree with your interpretation, because Eddy has kind of a dark side that Tumble really doesn't, because he's still always trying to do like he avoids betraying anybody, but Eddy kind of falls for it more than he does, and she kind of is able to she's kind of willing to go along with Yem's manipulation, but yeah, and she appears like she has advanced ideas, but she's really kind of like Karl Marx in her thinking, because she kind of has like an imagination that of something that is never really going to work.
But that doesn't dispute the fact that she actually authentically sees why it should work or why it's necessary. So she can see that it's necessary, and similar, like Roger Ver can see that this is necessary. He just can't participate in a way to actually bring it about, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I was wrong in my interpretation earlier. Yeah, Roger Ver is more like Eddy.
So, Daniel, talk about, you touched on Pennywise and Chansey. Talk about some of the other ones that stick out for you, please.
Okay, sure. So let's see. Well, Satan from Paradise Lost, that's a classic. I'd recommend it. The middle part is kind of dull, I think, but I mean, I enjoyed it a lot overall. That's a great book. That's a book that's kind of about psychoanalysis or kind of about recovering from childhood traumas, because the it monster is kind of like a collective trauma in the town. It's kind of like a abuse that people don't want to talk about, and all of the in order to defeat it, the characters have to go back into their childhoods, and they have to remember things that they had forgotten, and they have to relive these old memories, and they have to make things come out differently. And there's like this cycle. So because the it monster reappears every 30 years, so it's like a cycle of abuse. I think that's Stephen King's best book, from of the ones I've read anyway. Bugs Bunny and Cheshire Cat, those ones are kind of obvious, I think. Like the Cheshire Cat, so what happens? Bugs Bunny is always fooling people. I don't know. I don't think anything else needs to be explained about him, but it just doesn't matter who you are, right? He can sort of mess with you and get out of whatever trap you try to put him in. And the Cheshire Cat is like somebody who sees into the fourth wall. So he's kind of a fourth wall breaking character, and he is not. He doesn't. The rules of the world. It's sort of like he can break the rules of the world. And he's not people with who are trying to control everything can't control him, because they can't chop his head off when he's just a floating head. So Don Quixote, that I really like that book. That book shows that if you live in your own if you can be insane long enough, eventually other people will want to join you. So his story is kind of like something where he has a version of the like everyone in Don Quixote is mad. It's just that everyone other than Don Quixote believes the same delusions, so they have a shared delusion, whereas Don Quixote has his own delusion. So he's kind of like someone who doesn't unthinkingly go along with the shared delusion, and eventually his delusion brings everyone else in. So that's kind of a metaphor for Bitcoin, I think, because I think Bitcoin is kind of like that. Everybody outside of Bitcoin thinks Bitcoin is crazy and doesn't work, but eventually they'll have to join in the madness. That's what I think will happen anyway. So Willy Wonka, he's like a force of nature, because all of the children that go into his factory are punished or rewarded by their own virtues and vices. So he's kind of like it's kind of like in his factory. There's a natural justice, and he doesn't create it. It's just like it's just there. It's just in his world. The truth comes out. So it's like karma works, and he's kind of like the agent of karma, I think. And Monkey D. Luffy, that's a great anime called One Piece. So I really recommend that one. Just go watch it. So Maggie Simpson is kind of like somebody who seems like she's a baby most of the time, but sometimes she seems like she has weird powers or something. There's not that much to her. Conan, that's a great movie. Oh, well, Conan fights a cult in the movie.
So real quick on Maggie Simpson. So in some ways, relating back to some of the abilities of the others, resist programming is like Maggie Simpson, the general way that she's dismissed all the time, similar to sort of Chauncey Gardner's, like, he's sort of the opposite is kind of going on with him, being perpetually dismissed, sort of perpetually being uplifted, and it's not necessarily because of his innate abilities. And in some ways, Maggie Simpson, kind of like the opposite. You're seeing her maybe having like these sinister capabilities. She has the ability to be basically dismissed by everyone else because appearance is so diminutive. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. All of these characters are kind of ambiguous. Like you don't really know what's going on with them exactly, except Chauncey Gardner. You really, in the movie, you pretty much know what's going on with him, but he's ambiguous to everyone else. So Conan is, he's an independent thinker because he's a barbarian. And so he resists cult propaganda in the movie. Anyway, that's a great movie. It's my favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, and I would really recommend that one a lot. I didn't like the sequel as much, though. So Tom Bombadil, that's kind of an obvious one. He's kind of like someone who doesn't go along with what anybody else in Middle Earth wants, and it's unclear whether he has a plan or whether he's just kind of so retarded that he's not able to understand what's happening. But he has a very long view, and he doesn't mind if Sauron takes over Middle Earth, because he's like, well, eventually things will come out all right anyway. So the next character is Timothy Dexter, and somebody on Twitch told me about him, and he's the only real person in this wheel, and he's an entrepreneur from early American history, and he wrote a very strange book called A Pickle for the Knowing Ones, and well, he was just a very eccentric person, and he made lots of money in very improbable ways, like shipping coal to a coal miner. Well, just look him up on Wikipedia. But like he shipped coal to a place where they had lots of coal, but by luck or something, he happened to do it when there was this big strike going on. So they actually needed coal, and he made a bunch of money doing that. And he has a bunch of stories like that. And he tried to, well, just look him up. He's really funny. So The Little Prince, that's a great book. And the Little Prince is kind of a mysterious character. I don't know. It's hard for me to just read the book. It's really good. There you go. Those are my favorite characters. Oh, and my time is almost out too. So good. I got through it. Thank goodness.
Perfect, Daniel. I'm wondering, do you have any knowledge of the Charlie Kaufman movie series, like King John Malkovich or adaptation or any of those types of films?
Oh yeah, okay. Yes, I love being John Malkovich, and I love adaptations. I'm not sure of any other films that would be related, but yeah, those are both really funny.
Yeah, I thought that some of those kind of themes that are in that type of Charlie Kaufman, like self-referential, story within a story type of thing that sort of references a degree of the programming and things that seem to be central tenets of like the characters in your like us and that you're drawing forth out of your subconscious and stuff, you know?
Yeah, well, so I mean, I think that people have evolved for an environment that's not the one they're living in now. So that kind of goes back to one of these pictures here. Load. Yeah, this one. So Tumble is kind of like the normal guy, and this picture is about him believing that he's adapted to his environment, and he's sort of discounting Yem, which is part of his environment that he is not adapted to very well at all. And to me, humans have been adapted to an environment of small tribes, and the means that people have learned to develop large civilized societies are sort of outside of their natural understanding. So, and that's kind of like all of these people living with Yem and acting like he's totally normal, and just not understanding what he can do to them. So everybody kind of lives in. Excuse me.
No, this has been some enlightening
Sorry,
stuff.
Cosmos. There might be
some
some additional chatter coming in. Our next group of guys have just entered the room. They were kind of in a waiting room across the hall, but they are in the room now. So welcome, Inside Out and crew. They're going to be taking over in 2 minutes. Is when their shift starts.
Okay, yeah, well, welcome, and well, yeah, I'll just wrap it up then. But yeah, people. Like this picture is kind of like it depicts the means that people have used to develop large societies. So I mean, I don't think that this picture is just Twitter, but it's kind of like the ziggurat. It's kind of like something that's in the center that everybody has to pay attention to. There's a coordinator in the center that tells everybody how they're supposed to act.
Sweet.
And they don't have better technology than that, but also people just don't understand what can be done to them with this kind of system. And when people live in small tribes, they naturally can create the small world network shape, which is it prevents manipulation naturally. And so people are kind of acting like they're in a small tribe, and they're kind of acting like they can trust everybody, because that's kind of what would naturally happen. But really, they're living in this.
Hey, so I'm like, yeah.
I love it, man. Daniel, like, without, like, I know that we have Inside Out.
Wait, so I'm hearing them right now.
I want to speak for everyone.
I don't know if they're...
Okay, well, anyway, I'll get going now.
Oh.
But thanks a lot. I'm glad you all enjoyed what I went through.
Oh, it was
today.
amazing.
Daniel, man,
Daniel, you want to give
unbelievable.
anybody a shout out?
Okay.
where they could find you, all that good stuff.
I'll give Cypher a shout out. I told him I wouldn't give him a shout out on Twitter earlier, but nobody else wanted a shout out, so I guess there's time for that.
All right, brother. Where can they find you? What's the best place? What's the first thing you would send them to?
User24 on Twitch and Daniel Krawisz on YouTube, and I'm also on Streamanity.
Fantastic.
So slow.
Hey,
Daniel, that was incredible, man. I don't think that you need to touch a thing about your art. I think you can put that into a graphic novel right now. And yeah, that was unbelievable, man.
I agree
Thanks,
completely, man. Totally inspiring, and honestly, I think there were probably some people taking bets as to what you were going to do for your 2 hours, and I'll bet they all lost their money because nobody expected that one. Nobody expected that.
Great.
And thank you so much for your time, Dan. We know you're a really busy guy, and I'm sure there's tons of people trying to get access to you all the time. So we really want to thank you for trying to help us out with this little insanity. That's
Well, thanks, no problem. And I'm glad I had something to show you because I didn't actually have time to prepare anything. But
It was perfect.
I'm glad you liked my story, and yeah, it's really fun for me to go through it. It's like it's kind of like a movie that I have to just tell people. But anyway, I have to go now because I'm past my time by 1 minute now. So anyway, great to talk to you all. Thanks for inviting me, and I'll see you around.
Hey, thank you.
Daniel.
Thank you, Daniel. All right.
Okay, so
Gage.
yeah, my dash is that.
It's been amazing so far, huh?
Yeah, so far so good,
Well,
man.
no, don't worry about that.
I think they got a little bit of feedback going on. They're getting their
We just need to
together.
teach this guy how to mute his microphone, and they'll be great.
Yeah.